Have you ever really sat and thought about the fact that you spend 98% of your time at 70 degrees or 68 degrees?
Man. Yeah, you thermoregulation, man. You got to get cold, get hot.
Yeah, you do, right?
Embrace the suck.
We're building this kind of human zoo, and it's very disconnected from our biology. And it's done in the name of energy efficiency or progress, but we're not thinking about our biology while we're building these things.
I just want to biohack, bro. I want the easy path.
No such thing.
What is up, guys? We are doing a massive giveaway that I want to share with you. All you need to do is subscribe to the channel for a chance to win a Mito X series or Mito Pro X series from Mito Red Light. Is a son of a bitch. We're giving this away. This is $450. Very exciting. And we are also giving away a molecular hydrogen maker. I love this guy as well. It's really great for reducing inflammation, tastes delicious. And the red light I use all the time, uses my night light in my living room. It's great for collagen repair. It's great for your eyes, great for your skin. It's awesome. It is a total of about a $700 value of the giveaway. All you gotta do is subscribe between now to the month of August. We'll announce at the end of August. We'll announce it here as well as on the Instagram page labeled Aaron Alexander. That is my name. Subscribe, win some stuff. Enjoy the conversation.
Breathing affects us in a big way, a lot like light. What would be your broad overview if we were to do a masterclass on the impacts of photobiomodulation, or just the way that our human meat suits interact with light? Where do we start with that?
Well, it starts and really ends with the sun, right? So I think I'll borrow from you that we are sun creatures, right? I think you said that recently when you were speaking to RJ.
Did I say that?
You did, and we are sun creatures.
Like plants.
Yes, and photosynthesis isn't just for plants,
Yeah.
right? And so it starts with the sun, and we can break down the solar spectrum into three main components. So actually, I think you asked somebody, what is light? And what we think of as light is the visible part of the solar spectrum, so what we can see. Yeah. But there's two parts of the solar spectrum that we can't see. That's the ultraviolet portion and then the infrared portion. And so we think of these as terms of frequencies or wavelengths. So to break it down, you've got ultraviolet, which is 200 nanometers to 400 nanometers. Then you've got visible light, which is 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers, and a nanometer is a wavelength or a billionth of a meter. And then you've got infrared, which is 700 nanometers up to about 10,000 nanometers, and that's infrared's composed of near, mid, and far. And all of the parts of the solar spectrum have biological effects. So starting with UV, most people are familiar with vitamin D. So we were talking about that earlier. So I recommend the app D-Minder. It can tell you pretty much wherever you are in the world if you can make vitamin D and how much roughly you'll make.
I want to come back to the D-Minder thing and all of that after this, but continue.
Okay. Yeah. So UV is and also just to level set, the solar spectrum divided into those three parts. 7% of that energy is ultraviolet. 39% of the energy is visible. And actually 54% of the energy is infrared, just to give you an idea. And then, so if we go back to ultraviolet light, you've got UVB. Most people are familiar for vitamin D. That's roughly 285 nanometers to 315 nanometers. And then you've got UVA, which is 315 to 400. UVB makes vitamin D. UVA increases nitric oxide in the skin, and can also, it's a longer wavelength, goes deeper, and in excess can cause sunburn. But all of them are important. So when we're outside, generally speaking, of the UV we're getting, 95% is UVA, and only 5% is UVB. And also, you're only getting UV, generally speaking, around midday, and then even it depends on like what latitude you're at. So right now,
go on.
In Austin, in summertime, plenty of UVB to make vitamin D. But January in Toronto, good luck. There's no vitamin D synthesis happening.
And say again the difference between UVA and UVB, as far as like relevance to humans.
So UVB is vitamin D.
Yeah.
So that's so UVB hits the skin, and it interacts with 7-dihydrocholesterol, also known as provitamin D. and to start the synthesis of vitamin D. I mean, then that molecule then has to go to the liver to get converted into another form of vitamin D, which is the type that we measure in the blood. And then actually that part has to go again to the kidneys to get converted ultimately to the part of vitamin D that your immune system uses. But it starts with UVB hitting the skin. 285 to 315 nanometers is the wavelength for UVB. And then UVA is 315 to 400. It's longer wavelength, so it penetrates deeper. Doesn't make vitamin D. It does spur nitric oxide synthesis, and it's linked with sunburn, and excess UVA, can be problematic.
What about windows? When we're behind a car window or a house window and it's blocking out, is it the UVA that it's blocking out?
It's going to block out the shorter wavelength, so it's going to block the UVB, which is the one that you want for vitamin D, right? So unfortunately, you get only, to the extent that you get UV, you would only be getting the longer wavelength UVA. And so you basically get all of the downside without the upside.
Why
of making
would
vitamin
windows
D.
do that?
Well, it's how they're designed, and actually, the windows that they're making now are even worse. If you see these green tint windows, those are meant for energy efficiency to block out the infrared too, and that's a huge problem. This is one of the key messages I say to anybody that's listening is we're building this kind of human zoo, and it's very disconnected from our biology.
Yeah, it's
like
confusing.
these and it's done in the name of energy efficiency or progress, but we're not thinking about our biology while we're building these things. And so this low E glass, I remember when I put in a patio door, they wanted me to use the low E glass, and I was like, no, I don't want the low E glass. I understand I live in Arizona, and I want I want the air conditioning. I don't want to run it on overdrive, but I actually want that infrared coming into my house because I want to be exposed to infrared, which is super important.
You want to sunbathe.
I do. Well, and that's why I moved to Arizona, and I'm sure that's why you live here.
Yeah. Yeah, and then what are your thoughts, and it's okay if you don't know a lot about this, but what are your thoughts on sunscreen and sunblock and windows, as well, like blocking out certain aspects of the full spectrum of light? It feels to me intuitively and based off of talking to people that are a lot smarter with this stuff than I am, that is a big part of the problems that manifest.
It is.
The body's adept at processing the whole food version of sunlight, the whole spectrum of sun. We've been doing it for absolute, ever, eternity.
Since the beginning.
Yeah. And now suddenly it's like, okay, well, let's just block out a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and then we're going to stop cancer from transpiring. It doesn't even test the
sniff test. I mean, it's total BS, man. And it's not BS in the sense that if you work indoors all week, and you never see the sun, and then you go to the beach, and you're not prepared. That yes, that can be problematic, right? Because you go from 0 to 100, and then obviously you're going to burn. But what we should be doing is getting regular, moderate sun exposure, at all different times of the day.
Yeah, building like
our ancestors, the solar callus. Yeah. And so I'm not a huge fan of sunscreen, and then also if you're going to do these interventions, you should, in an ideal state, understand exactly what's happening. I mean, part of and the same thing with sunglasses too. So part of the issue is that there's actually a chromophore in the eyes. They thought it was actually only in the eyes. It's called rhodopsin. So when UV hits the eyes, it hits this chromophore, and it actually tells the body to start making melanin, right? So, I mean, it's just, again, this is just the brilliant design of this vessel, right? That this very subtle signaling happens, and so you start making melanin in the skin. So you're prepared for the sun, but they also found rhodopsin in the skin too. So basically, what you need UV to hit the skin to start increasing melanin production.
Amazing. So you're getting a signaling through the eyes to produce melanin through the rest of the body.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
so if you're wearing sunglasses, it confuses the rest of your body's interpretation of
course,
of where it is in the
you're
environment.
more likely to burn.
Wow.
Right. So I'm not against sunglasses per se, but I would say my personal routine is I go for a 10 to 15 minute walk every afternoon around noon, shirt off, try to get sun.
Dick out?
Not in my neighborhood.
Fair enough.
And I don't wear sunglasses, right? Because I don't want to. But if I was in Utah for a couple of weeks, I was on the lake for a couple of hours. Yeah, I brought my sunglasses.
What do you think about sun in the balls?
I don't. Well, again, ancestrally seems to make sense, sort of. But and actually, there's some data on red and near infrared light for testosterone.
Yeah.
In rats, anyway, or mice.
Makes sense to me. The light excels 90% of the testosterone is being produced in your body. Infrared light passes how many centimeters does infrared light pass through the skin?
So generally, I say red light is a few millimeters,
Or millimeters rather.
And infrared can be a few centimeters. Actually,
Okay.
depends on the power and the wavelength.
Yeah. So it makes sense to me that those cells would probably be getting some type of solar, stimulation from the sun if you're not blocking it all the time. And if those are the main powerhouses or cells or factories that are producing testosterone, it would make sense to me if you're plugging a little bit of that energy from the sun into that space, that it would probably have an effect, just intuitively speaking.
Yeah, well, I agree. I would say the data, because I've been asked, actually, the funny thing is the whole reason that I started using red light myself was for that reason. When I was in my late 30s, I was concerned about falling testosterone because it is a huge epidemic. Yeah. And so I started using red light on my crown jewels.
The nuts. I'm a big fan.
I didn't personally
I'll
see
sit the nuts on one of your. You create a company called Mito Red Light, which I'm a massive fan of. I'll plop the nuts right on the travel panel. It's a good move. It's a strong move.
I like it.
I'm a big advocate.
We've got a couple of anecdotes.
Is that okay? Can I do that?
Well, I would say if it starts to feel warm, there is a reason they're descended, right? So and that's actually one of the reasons why I don't get into the sauna that much, actually, because I don't want to,
sperm motility and such.
Yeah, and just there's a reason they're.
I'm a big advocate for contraception, so for me, we're good with the red light on the nuts. Do you think there's anything I should be worried about with that?
Using the red light? Well, no. As long as you don't, if you start to feel that they're warming up, then I would say that's enough.
What if I like it?
Well, and rock it out, man. Whatever floats your boat. I think it's probably good. And again, we've had a couple of good anecdotes, like people that were low getting into normal or even high normal. I think if you're, I was 450, 500 for several years, and it didn't really do much for me personally. So I don't know exactly, but hormones are complicated. There's all these feedback mechanisms and stuff.
Yeah,
so
I'm not claiming that. I have no idea if that makes any difference. I just figure why not? And
look, when I do red light, I'm naked. And because to me, it's the more I can get, the more surface area exposed, the better.
Yeah, yeah. So something else I think it's interesting and confusing with the sunblock is it is going to dampen your body's awareness or sensitivity to the sun. So it's not going to send you the signal that it's time to get out of the sun. Whereas if you're not wearing sunblock, naturally you will start to feel a little bit hot. You'll get a little bit red. You'll feel a little tingly. You might start to feel exhausted. You might feel all these sensations. And it's just like if you're drinking water. If you drink too much water, you get hypernatremia and you throw off your mineral balances, and you can hurt yourself or even die. Right. Similar concept with sun. Our body is naturally designed to be able to understand and feel when we've had enough and when we haven't had enough. And when you throw in that new factor where you're blocking out certain spectrums of light to prevent you from getting sunburnt, I think it's very confusing for the body, and then could potentially lead to other issues, downstream issues.
Potentially, I would. So I would sort of agree with that. I do think, from an ancestral perspective, or even if you go to the tropics, people that work outside, they're wearing clothing. A lot of times. I remember the first time when I was a teenager, I went to Mexico, and I would see people working outside in full clothing, and it didn't make sense to me. It's why would it's so hot? Why would you be wearing clothes? But it's obvious you're doing it for sun protection. Yeah. So
I'm not talking about zinc, by the way, because
zinc specifically.
I'm not talking about zinc.
Okay.
Zinc, you're blocking out the whole thing. Zinc is you're putting like a shirt over your skin.
It literally reflects it back.
Yeah, it's like a skin shirt.
Like zinc oxide.
Yeah. I'm not talking about zinc oxide. Yeah, so or just wearing sun protection in the form of a shirt or a sun hat or something. But the other ones where they're blocking out certain UV, would it be blocking out UV B? Yeah, is the main thing.
B and NA.
Both of them. Yeah, and so it seems to me that would be perhaps a confusing thing for the body, where it's letting in large percentage of it, but blocking out very specific ones, and it's giving you the idea that you can get all of this direct sunlight. Not to mention just baking all those chemicals in your skin. It feels weird to me.
Well, I totally agree. So the only sunscreen that I use is zinc oxide, and it's generally if I'm in Mexico and I'm on the beach and I start to turn pink.
Yeah.
I might put on a shirt or I might put some on my schnoz.
Yeah.
I mean, but other than that, like the goal is to build a base. This used to be kind of common knowledge. Like, hey, you're going on vacation, build a base tan, right? Like go to the tanning salon. And now it just seems that we've just gone so far into demonizing the sun, which is just completely ridiculous.
Something that's become very popular. We're already talking about, red light panels. You have the company Mito Red Light, which again I'm a massive fan of. I have the Mito panels like all over my place, and the travel panels. Literally,
appreciate it.
One of the most important things that I will never leave my house without if I'm traveling would be a little portable red light panel. Not because like I need to have the collagen synthesis or that I need to make my skin look nice or whatever. I use it as a nightlight, and so having that little block that I can take with me to a hotel someplace where the lighting is terrible, and walk into the room, turn all the lights off, and just have my block, and it illuminates the whole entire room. To me, just that in and of itself is fantastic, and then I'll use it for reading.
I bought a present for you. I got a different one that I travel with.
Oh, good.
Which is more of like it's
so important. I find it to be such a big deal.
Yeah, and I have obviously the blue blocking glasses too. Like I don't leave home without those.
Yeah.
But I've got a nice battery powered travel. It's more for ambient lighting, so it's not as powerful as the block.
Oh, great. I love
that.
Anyways,
remind me to give that to you before I leave.
Please, I'm very excited about that. And you guys also have like nightstand night lights as well, which I don't have one of those, but I want to get one of those guys. That's what you brought.
That's what
I'm very excited about that.
Because it's super. I mean, it just folds up. It's super light and it's battery powered.
Yeah.
I'm one of those strange people that turns off the power to my bedroom at night. So,
good for you.
So having a battery powered kind of nightstand light was solving my own problem actually.
Yeah, I unplug stuff because I've had a building biologist is the term for them.
Was it Brian Hoyer?
Brian Hoyer.
Yeah,
Brian Hoyer come over to my place in Santa Monica when I was in LA. And he has various different instrumentation that can measure the frequencies coming off of like cords and outlets and different spots in your house. My bedroom, surprisingly in Santa Monica, actually wasn't that bad. And then when I plugged just like the clock in or plugged like the salt lamp beside my bed, when I plugged that in, suddenly that current's pouring through the cord out into the salt lamp.
It's
and
crazy.
It's just blasting out. It was like 8 feet or 7 feet or something like that.
It's
and my head is
yeah.
right in the midst of it, which is, to me, again, intuitively seems like probably just maybe just don't do that.
Yeah, well, to me, so let's just put aside, the science of like voltage gated calcium channels and what happens when you're exposed to non-native EMF to the cells. Let's just put that all aside.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that you can lay in bed and measure the voltage on your body with a voltmeter.
Mm.
You can turn the power off or unplug devices and see the voltage drop.
Mm.
It's objective, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, and then the question becomes, well, our ancestors were not carrying this voltage on their body because the power grid has only been around for 100-something years.
Right.
So they weren't carrying this excess voltage on their body while they were sleeping. Maybe I don't want that either, right? And it's such a simple thing where I just, I go a little bit further than you and I turn off the power to the whole room because actually, there's wiring in the walls and that electric field can come out to the wall and essentially, accumulate on your body while you're sleeping.
Yeah. And getting one of those little timers for your Wi-Fi in your house is a nice thing as well.
I don't even have Wi-Fi. So
most people probably do though. And so like you can like have it turned off just the hours of 10 to 7 or whatever and then have it turned back on. It's not a big deal at all.
It's not a big deal. And I used to do that. And actually it's kind of good because, you probably should be going to bed. So if the thing turns off while you're like watching some stupid thing on YouTube, it's like, all right, I should be going to bed anyway.
So your place is hardwired? Is that the term for it?
Yeah, we use.
So you're like a weirdo. This is good.
I'm a straight weirdo.
Nice, good for you.
Total weirdo.
I respect that.
I sleep in my whole family actually. So every day I'm responsible. Everyone goes to bed, and then I go and turn off all the breakers to all the bedrooms, and we all sleep in canopies too.
Oh wow, like Faraday guys. Yeah. Wow, you're nuts.
Yeah,
I love that.
Well, my son's room in our old house, we actually shielded his whole room, so we painted it.
Paint the walls.
Paint the wall, paint the ceiling. It was a bear.
When I if I decide to like own a house that's like this is also because I think probably from investment perspective, renting a house probably makes, a lot of sense anyway. But if and when I decide to own a house that I actually live in, those would be all things that I would absolutely like to do. I think that'd be a really, really cool project, which it sounds like you probably do in your place.
It was funny when I went to sell that house, how I had to explain to the person that was
like,
buying it, like, by the way, sign here.
We don't care.
You're never going to get a Wi-Fi. You're not going to get a signal, like in this room. Like there's no Wi-Fi. There's no cell signal. Like I used to really like going into that room. Though it's probably
it feels
psychological.
Different.
It feels felt different. So calm.
Oh I've had that experience.
But I also knew that it was shielded, but I would just go in there and lay on the floor and relax occasionally.
It feels quiet is the way it feels. Yeah. So something I'm curious about is there a difference? How closely can we mimic the red and infrared and the near and the far and all the different frequencies that you are producing with a red light panel to the actual, what you would get through sunlight? So like non-native red light compared to native red light coming from the sun.
Yeah, so this, the good news is that with LED technology and where it's at, we can mimic the sun pretty, we can do whatever we want. So we can create light of any wavelength. It's pretty amazing. So like one company I just invested in is called Energy, ENYRGY. They make narrowband UVB for vitamin D. And that's actually very hard to do, but the point is that, they can create a device that's putting out 295 nanometers exactly, plus or minus, and just for the express purpose of making vitamin D, right? And it's an amazing product. I'd recommend you look it up and check it out. I have one in my house and one in my office for my employees because I want everybody to have high vitamin D because, cold and flu season, their immune systems will be in good shape. It's just good for business, frankly.
Fun.
And then with red and near infrared, we can do the same thing. So like we've got devices that have 660 and 850 nanometers. That's red and near infrared. We've got devices that have 630, 660, 850, 810, 830. We can create any combination of wavelengths we want. Now, predominantly, when it comes to optimizing for power and safety, we want between 600 and 900 nanometers. And that's what I refer to as the optimal part of the optical window. And so just the kind of short explanation of that is...
Does optical window mean light that you can detect with your eyes?
No, it's actually... So if you go to Wikipedia, there's something called the near-infrared biological optical window or something. I'm probably butchering the thing, but it's referring to the part of the spectrum where the light gets absorbed, but it doesn't create heat, essentially. So infrared, the people get this confused all the time. We talk about infrared, and infrared's made of near, mid, and far. Then they think sauna, they think infrared sauna.
Sure.
And that's mid and far infrared. And that's specifically these longer wavelengths that go in and get absorbed by water and create heat. That's how an infrared sauna works. I mean, that's how the sun works. That's how the sun heats us up. It's literally heating us up from the inside out as it gets absorbed in the water in our body. But below 1,000 nanometers or so, or more specifically below 900, that's near infrared, but it's non-thermal. It's not getting absorbed. The water absorption is very minimal, which means there's minimal heat absorption, which means that heat creation, which means it's super safe, and it allows it to penetrate deeper into the tissues. So for like panels like ours, you want to be between 600 and 900 nanometers because you want to optimize for penetration. You want to optimize for kind of the ATP production that happens when you get exposed to red and near infrared light, and you want to strip out the heat. We're not trying to create heat. We're just trying to basically support the cells to make energy.
Yep. I got lost when you said optimize for penetration, then my mind went down various different gutters. So I'm actually serious. So with the red light panels, what is actually happening when that red light frequency or near, mid, far frequency optimizing for penetration penetrates your dermis and goes in and interacts with the mitochondria and all the different reactions and such? And why does that matter? And does that matter to... I mean, obviously it doesn't really probably matter for you to like put language to it as a person, just go the freak outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, can you break down kind of the story of what's happening there when it actually comes in contact with the human?
Yeah, so, I usually like to explain this in the micro and the macro. And the macro story is that modern humans are spending 93% of their time inside. So they're light is a nutrient, and they're lacking in this very important nutrient, right? Critical. So that's the macro story. Like, why should I get a red and near infrared light panel? It's, well, because you're not outside getting these beneficial wavelengths.
What if you're getting up every morning at 6 a.m. or whatever, and you are bathing in all the frequencies, and you're sun gazing, and you're butthole sunning, and all the different things? Do you need a red light? Is there still
Between
space
6 and 7? Well, I mean, I guess like when you say
when the
get up
sun's
at 6
rising, wherever you're at in the world, when the
for
sun's
15
rising?
minutes or 30 minutes, I mean,
Yeah.
that's nothing. If you think about, like, our ancestors were outside all day long, hunting and gathering, or working the fields or whatever they were doing. So no, first of all, I do think that's a good idea, and I do that personally. Like, the first thing I do when I wake up, get a glass of water, I go outside, ground, and get as much sun as I can.
Yeah.
But then I'm inside in front of the PC, just like everybody else.
Right.
Or I'm in my car driving to the office, and then I'm in front of the PC.
Yeah.
So, so you're deficient. As far as I'm concerned, you're massively deficient. Even people like us that are very aware and try to spend a lot of time outside, still deficient. Like, it's just, and vitamin D is a proxy for that, but it's. Vitamin D is like, this is one of the things with vitamin D that upsets me, is that people say that they're vitamin D deficient, so they take a pill.
Yeah.
But you're not really vitamin D deficient. You're sunlight deficient, or you're UVB light deficient. And so taking a vitamin D pill is not really addressing the root of the issue. You know, and so I'm a huge. I have to be careful because I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice. But I personally haven't taken vitamin D pills in over 10 years. And I make it a point to get regular sun midday.
What's your vitamin D levels in your blood work?
So I've been using the energy lamp for 2 months. So in April, I was at 37, which is low. And then I used the energy lamp for 2 months, and I was at 78. So it works, at least in my N=1.
Yeah.
For a while, it's really interesting. It's kind of a tangent, but for a while, my vitamin D was quite high. And I haven't taken pills in 10 years. I wrote an article about it. I hypothesized that my red light routine.
You think it was because you're optimizing for penetration?
Perhaps. I don't know. That's. I think my wife would disagree about that one.
Really? You want to talk about it?
I'm going to have to tell her about this conversation.
Any direction you want, bro.
As a quick aside, we actually are working on a vaginal red light product. I don't know, like, this is going down
for like mitochondrial health or sterilization stuff, or like bacterial things.
Well, like for especially like after a woman gives birth, you know, there's a healing process that's involved, and so
like collagen repair.
Yeah, and
elasticity.
There's something to it. So we're working on an idea. Originally, I was reluctant to it, but I do think there's actually a need for it. So we're working on it.
I've actually heard for people working on expanding the dong, their penile situation. I've heard of using stacking like shockwave therapy.
Yeah, which I'm familiar with.
Yeah, which is helpful.
With red light would seem to make sense.
With
right?
red light as well.
You're damaging the tissue and you're helping
so you're stimulating angiogenesis is the term for like you're producing new blood vessels. And so you're providing this like irritant, this hermetic stressor to those blood vessels, which then causes them to respond by growing back, you know, more robustly, and stacking on top of that with the healing therapeutic collagen inducing benefits of red light is all right.
So are you saying we should develop a cylinder?
Yeah, bro. Why not? Why?
I'll add it to the product development list.
I think the world is ready. You know?
All right. Well, we'll add it to the list. I don't know how high on
the list. You got it for the eyes.
Yeah.
Don't you guys have helmets too for like stimulating hair growth?
We do. And that's actually how red light.
And we're going to come back to the story of red light, deep penetration in the skin and what's happening there.
Yeah. So, we went on. Sorry, I went off on a massive tangent. So what is happening? You go out in the body, you go out in the sun, infrared radiation and red light hit the body. The main mechanism is just increasing ATP. I mean, that's the main story. Yeah, and we think that it's through a chromophore called cytochrome C oxidase. And it's the short explanation is that in order to make energy or make ATP, oxygen and cytochrome C oxidase need to join. It's like in the final step of making ATP. But within the cell, cytochrome C oxidase is either bound with nitric oxide or oxygen, right? And so if it's bound with nitric oxide, the theory is that when cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide are bound together and it gets hit with red or near infrared light, it literally vibrates them apart. And then so there's more free cytochrome C oxidase available to bind with oxygen to make ATP. So we kind of deduce that because we see an increase in nitric oxide and we see an increase in ATP. And so that's why, and so that's in essence what it's doing. And it's increasing the power plants of the cell, the energy that they create. And so the cell just functions better. Right? It just has more energy to do whatever the hell it is its job is. And so that's why there's close to 8,000 studies now on photobiomodulation.
Yeah.
And
it's a great word to drop at a dinner party.
It is great. But they're studying, like, you name it, and like whether it's hair or bone or skin or brain or testes, every single part of the body. Because if the cell has a mitochondria, then in theory it can benefit from being exposed to these wavelengths of light. So it sounds like too good to be true, but if you understand how it works, then it's not. Another way that it works, so there's two other interesting things that happen. One is the melatonin story. So I don't know if you know the melatonin story.
Tell me.
So I think we've all kind of experienced this. If you spend a day at the beach outside and you're in the sun for several hours, I don't know about you, but I sleep like a baby.
Sure. Yeah.
And so why is that? And so what we're understanding is that when infrared radiation hits the cells, increases ATP. There's no free lunch in biological systems, right? So you increase ATP, so you're increasing oxidative stress or reactive oxygen species. And actually, nitric oxide is actually a free radical, right? So the body, you're increasing the energy production, but you're also increasing the stress, oxidative stress. So the cell has to put out the fire, if you will. And how does it do that? It increases melatonin production inside the cell, like at the level of the mitochondria, like right at the source, which kind of makes sense, right? You'd want the coolant mechanism built into the reactor. Yeah. So when you're out and you're getting tons of infrared radiation, you're upregulating ATP, but you're also increasing melatonin production. So you build this massive reservoir of melatonin in the body throughout the day. And then when the sun sets and you get dim light onset melatonin production from the pineal gland, there's more of that to go around because you built this massive reservoir during the day. And so it helps you fall asleep and sleep better when you get infrared radiation throughout the day.
How interesting. That's amazing. Something that I like using the red light panels for is I'll do a meditation in the evening, and I'll usually get naked and sit in front of I have what's the big ass panel you guys have called? Like XL Pro?
Probably the Mega.
The Mega.
The Pro, Mega Plus, Mega X.
I love that. It's like, I'm a very big fan of it. It's very big and very powerful.
The idea.
And when you turn it on, it's like breathing. It's as though there's a little sun in my house. It's very exciting.
Well, I'm sure your neighbors love it too, because it lights up the whole room.
Lights up the whole thing, and I've got people can see my Instagram story. Sometimes I post myself working out. I'll get stoned in the evening and work out and put the red lights on and do all sorts of weird shenanigans, and the red lights just pumping out everything. It's good, but I find that to be supportive for sleep, and I know that there's some research and there are data around that. And then also simultaneously, it feels a little bit contradictory because it's also seemingly like stimulating. So how does that work?
Well, again, so the melatonin story, for people that want to dive into the science, there's a paper by Russell Ryder and Scott Zimmerman, I think, in 2019, where they do a deep dive on this. And they're estimating that as much as 95% of the melatonin that's made in the body is made when we're exposed to infrared radiation. And the whole melatonin story with the pineal gland is like only a tiny slice of the total melatonin. And then there was also a study in which I found interesting, which I actually found before the Ryder paper, in elite Chinese female basketball players. And what they did is they did 30 minutes of red light like you do early evening.
Yeah, I've heard this.
And they reported, there was like subjective sleep quality scores, and they all went way up, and their recovery was better. but they measured serum melatonin the next day, and it was up 67%. So again, that jives with the Russell Ryder and Scott Zimmerman perspective that 95% of melatonin is made in the cells when we get exposed to infrared radiation. Now, it is stimulating, and so everybody's different. Some people, we've got 75,000 lifetime customers, so we get a lot of feedback. And some people tell us that it's too stimulating for them at night, which I kind of get. I generally would recommend using it when the sun is up, anytime when the sun is up, because that's when we would be getting that energy.
Isn't it kind of comparable to like a fire, like the light you would get from a fire, though?
It is, but it's
a little more intense.
It's quite intense, compared to. I mean, I actually haven't built a bonfire and measured the intensity.
Yeah.
I probably should do that.
Yeah.
But the wavelengths are the same. I mean, it's red and near infrared light. So you would. Yeah. It's true that from an ancestral perspective, we would be exposed to red and near infrared light after, and actually that's the only light, really. I mean, moonlight.
Yeah.
That we'd be exposed to. But it's pretty intense, and so that would be my one caution.
My move is I'll put the little, on the YouTubes, put the little bonfire thing up. Got it like a TV on the wall. So I'll put nice ambient settings on there. So in the evening I'll put the fire on there, and then I'll put the red light panel on. And then so I'm actually getting the frequencies that we'd be getting from the fire.
Right.
And that's my move.
I like it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to steal that. Usually we only throw up the Yule log. During
I love
Christmas
a Yule
time.
log as well. That's nice. Yeah, it's good timing too.
All right, I'm gonna steal that. I actually so I'll have to, if you want to try something different, I'll get you a pod, which is I don't know if you've seen the Mito pod, but it's literally a pod that you get into, and it just.
I literally got it today. I haven't used it yet. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's very cool.
I like that because it's not as powerful as the panel.
Yeah.
And also you can lay down in it.
So in comparing, contrasting, because I want to stay as non-biased as possible, because obviously you founded the company Mito Red Light, which again I personally I like everything that you guys have created. I'm genuinely a massive fan of.
Appreciate it.
How do you compare and contrast between the different companies? Are there most of them kind of generally producing similar stuff? Is there a difference between the types of panels, the LEDs? Is there another technology that like if you're going to buy a panel, whether it's from Mito Red Light or not, what's the general baseline that you need to be entering in order to be getting like the results that you're looking for?
So great question. I would say we've been doing this for 6 years now, and I would say, the industry as a whole has come a long way in terms of the quality of the products that are out there. I mean, it's still all over the place, but for the most part, there's a lot of good options out there. Yeah. So I would say, you want to make sure. Well, one of the ways that you can know if the light is powerful enough or the right intensity is if the panels have active cooling or not. So like you said, you turn yours on and it kind of hums. I mean, it's because there's fans in the back cooling those LEDs.
Yeah.
Because those LEDs sit behind focusing lenses, and they're very mindfully designed to put out a certain intensity. And you can't do that if you're not actively cooling the LEDs. So if you find something, so like the pod, for example, is not actively cooling the LEDs, but it's a different design, and I would say that it's not the power is fractions of what the power of the panel is.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get a panel, make sure it's actively cooled. I would say also, I would invest in a company that actually does third-party testing so that you know that you're getting the wavelengths and the intensity that you want. Because in doing red light therapy right, you want the right intensity for the right duration. And kind of the analogy, I always give kind of the Thanksgiving turkey analogy.
Yeah.
So like a good butterball or a good Thanksgiving is, putting the butterball in the oven at 400 degrees for 4 hours. Now, that's 1600 degree hours. But that's very different than putting the butterball in the oven at 100 degrees for 16 hours or 1 hour at 1600 degrees, right? You get a very different outcomes in those three scenarios, but they're all 1600 degree hours. So you buy from a company that understands that what kind of the intensity, when we call it irradiance or joules per square centimeter is another metric. they should be able to explain to you what and have good data on the actual intensity or temperature, and then the duration that you should use it. So that would be kind of my guidance. But and also it should be between 600 and 900 nanometers. If you go above 1,000, I'm very worried about water absorption. I've seen panels come out that have over 1,000 nanometers, and you don't. And I would worry about fat loss at that wavelength, and you don't want fat loss in the face, right? For anti-aging, you want the fat, believe it or not, in your face and so it's still kind of the Wild West.
So
out
you're
there.
entering into like radio frequency territory with that?
No, that's just near infrared, but you're starting to get into the thermal part of infrared.
Yeah.
And longer wavelength, which penetrates deeper. And I know that they use 1064 nanometers, for instance, in dermatology offices for fat loss specifically.
That's like the radio frequency devices, which I've used one of those particularly for rehab stuff, because it can be the suggestions. It can be supportive with mobilizing stem cells, and it's also used by, I think maybe the term might be like estheticians. Or people that work with people for aesthetics to
localize fat loss.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful.
You can like shape, and you can work with like cellulite.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to use
shaping.
that here.
Right.
You don't want to lose fat in your face. I think when you lose fat in your face, it's irreversible.
What if you're like kind of a fatty? You want to get out of there.
Well, I would say maybe diet and exercise and actually improving your light exposure actually would be a good.
I just want to biohack, bro.
Spend all day biohacking.
I just want to biohack. I want the easy path.
No such thing.
Yeah, you're probably right. What about red light for eyes? I know that's sometimes I don't ever use. You guys got the little like ski goggle, little eye bud things, like sunbed things. I don't personally like using those. I feel like just closing my eyes is okay. Is it okay to open your eyes in front of a red light panel? Are there certain nanometers of light that's like, this is dangerous, this is not?
So, between the safety profile of 600 to 900 nanometers is very good, right? Like, so with UV and high energy light, you have to worry about, and so high energy is shorter wavelength light. So you have to worry about photochemical damage to the retina. And then with infrared, you have to worry about thermal damage to the eyes or to the body. So, but we're in the sweet spot between 600 and 900 where you don't have to worry about either of those. Having said that, the eyes are sensitive, and so our kind of strict company guidance is to just go ahead and wear the goggles. And
is that just to cover your ass, or is there actually a legit reason if there could be this like macular damage instead of regeneration?
So,
you're trying to be careful with your words right now.
we sell to thousands and thousands of people, and we can't possibly know every single individual's specific medical thing. So it is more of a abundance of caution thing. I will tell you that, like, I personally, actually will look at the lights for like a minute or something, like directly.
Sure.
Because I've seen data where that's what they do. And again,
it's supposed to improve vision. I've read, again, I'm not expert on this.
Myopia in particular, and they've even done studies in children. But the dose is everything, right? So you don't need a lot, actually. The eyes are super sensitive to light, obviously.
Yeah.
So and our panels are bright, so even a minute is plenty of light to send in there, do what it's going to do, and then usually I do close my eyes or throw on glasses.
Yeah.
I actually spent a lot of time finding good glasses to include with our lights, because originally we included those goggles, and everybody hates those goggles. They suck. They're not comfortable. They kind of sit on your eyeball. You can't see anything. So we came out with a dark tint green glasses, which you can put on. It still allows visible light through, so you can still do things and engage with your environment. But it just takes down the intensity.
That's a suggestion of why so much of the world is becoming myopic. Isn't just because we're staring at screens and we're contracting the ciliary muscles and the various different parts in order to be able to refract that light, and we're kind of stuck in like a tensed position, so we become myopic and nearsighted because we lack range in our vision. It's also sun actually changes, or light from sun, light in general, but light from sun, ideally, changes the structure and function of the eyes themselves. And if you are overly domesticated and you're just getting these like very weak, low lumen, non-native frequencies from light bulbs and bullshit all day and alternating currents and nonsense, it's kind of like ends up having you're like depriving the actual structure and function of the eyeball itself.
I totally agree with that. And I think we kind of live in caves almost, and we're not accustomed to kind of normal levels of light. And we actually don't appreciate, we're sitting below a spotlight right now, but that is probably like 1/100th of the amount of light.
It seems very bright, but
it seems bright, but it's not. And if you actually measure with a meter, it's probably 1/100th of what we would get if we were
And
outside.
it's also very irritating as well because it's alternating current instead of direct current. So that sensation that you get when you're in the sun and you're just like, you kind of exhale. It's like inherently parasympathetic. Like it's a calming sensation. Stack that with grounding. Now suddenly you're pouring yourself with free electrons and you're repairing some of the free radical stuff and you're like balancing and stabilizing and finding this homeostasis within yourself just by literally just doing, like, you're plugging yourself back into nature. All the things that like the hippies have been saying is like, it's real.
Well, I completely agree with it. Like, we have to get back to nature. I mean, it's so, when I look at the state of the world has a lot of problems. And one of the things that I would like to have a small hand in doing is helping people be a little bit healthier, be a little bit, a lot of this is just basic things. You don't have to spend any money. I mean, building a habit to go outside a little bit more often. I mean, it could be kind of profound. Just, we did some breathing before we started. Friggin' profound. Just a few deep breaths. These little things, they don't cost anything, right?
Yeah.
But, my hope is that if we can get people to be healthier physically, they can be healthier mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and, we can create a tidal wave of positive momentum.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes it just seems like we're spiraling very far in the other direction. And so we got to reverse course. And I think it really does start with people getting back to nature, really minding themselves, take care of yourself, your own health, and then kind of build outwards from there, right?
Mm.
Like, so I do spend a lot of time trying to take care of myself, but that is so I could be a better dad and better husband and better boss and better human. So I don't think it's selfish at all. I think it's actually quite selfless that I spend a lot of time and energy trying to be healthy so that I can show up for everybody else.
What about hair loss and red light? What's that all about? How can we support that situation for the balding folks out there?
Well, first of all,
obviously
it's not a cure-all because, but it actually, the funny thing is that's actually how red light therapy was originally discovered. There was a Hungarian scientist, and he was doing, they had just invented the red laser, and he was trying to replicate a study on skin cancer in mice. So he shaved the poor mice and implanted cancer tumors in their skin, and then he ablated the tumors with a red laser. Mm. And but the laser was very underpowered, so it didn't do anything to the tumors. But he noticed that the wounds healed faster, and that their hair grew back faster. Mm. And so that was kind of the origin for oh wow, red light actually has biological effects. And so actually there have been helmets, red light laser helmets on the market for I think well over a decade, and FDA cleared. There's so much evidence that even the FDA says yes, you can say that these are marketed for hair loss. Mm. So we have a laser helmet that I use, and actually I joke about my thinning hair. I'm almost 50, but I actually look better than I did a year ago.
Oh, cool.
So it's actually it's been a slow but noticeable improvement.
Yeah. And what about the collagen repair and skin health and just kind of creating more youth look for skin? What's happening there with red lights? Well,
very similar story, and I would say that probably that's the number one reason that people get interested in red light is for the aesthetic benefit. I mean, our top seller is kind of the tabletop panel, which would be good for the face and neck. And again, really good data. I mean,
the neck called, Gal says, the décolleté? Is that right?
Décolleté, I think. Yeah. Décolleté? I mean, I never heard that word until a customer said it to me several years ago.
A bunch of heteronormal dudes don't know it. Yeah. Décolleté?
Well, it is,
décolleté?
décolleté, I think.
Let us know.
Yeah,
in
I don't know.
comments.
Like
Décolleté?
I'm probably
Décolleté?
saying it wrong. But the nice thing about the tabletop panel is it's big enough to get the face and the décolleté.
Yeah. Sure, that's not what it's called.
I think it is. Somebody can correct me, and you would think I would have it right by now.
Yeah.
But it's the same story. We know it upregulates collagen production, and also an interesting thing. It increases, like we talked about earlier, it increases melatonin, increases antioxidant, anti-inflammatory pathways. I do think that getting a good amount of red and near-infrared light before you go into the sun is a good idea. And there was actually one preprint study that was done where they hit this guy's arm with various wavelengths of light, and then they hit it with UV trying to burn it. And the part of the arm that got preconditioned with infrared light had less burning. And they actually
because it's like your skin cells are preparing themselves for the sun.
They're prepared. I mean, think about how nature works. When
makes
when you
sense.
in the early morning, you're not getting UV.
Trees do that as well. It's like the whole mycelial network. They'll be sending information from tree to tree, being like, "Oh, we're out of XYZ nutrient," or a creature could be chomping on the leaves of a tree, and suddenly the tree gets a stimulation to say, "Oh shit, we need to release some type of compound that causes the leaves
away?
to become noxious."
Yeah, okay.
And so it's sending that information throughout the fabric or the net within the forest, and like we're doing our own version of that.
Very similar in the sense that if you think about it, like early morning, there's no UV. There is only, the reason at sunrise and sunset that it's orange or red, it's because it's those longer wavelengths that are making through to us through the atmosphere. So when the sun is up, you're getting infrared. And so that early morning infrared, it's a signal to the body that, hey, in a few hours, that UV is going to be raining down on you. You might want to start getting ready for that, right? And so, and of course, the body does. And so, but the problem is that we're not spending time out early morning.
Yeah.
And then so we're not getting those signals to get ready for the midday UV. And then, then we go out midday and we burn, and then we blame the sun, instead of our very
because we're a bunch of pansies,
dysfunctional, habits essentially.
A bunch of domesticated, weak pansies.
Yeah, I sort of kind of agree with that. But myself included. Like I'm like another good one is like, have you ever really sat and thought about the fact that you spend 98% of your time at 70 degrees or 68 degrees?
Man. Yeah, your thermoregulation, man. You got to get cold, get hot.
Yeah, you do, right?
Embrace the suck.
And now it's like, hey, we got a biohack. I got to get in the ice bath, or I got to get in the sauna.
That's what there's in.
That used to just be summer and winter.
I think like in Scandinavian countries, maybe that's what they do. Like when before the seasons are changing, like before it's about to become summer, they'll intentionally get hot and like endure the heat, and then before it becomes winter, they'll intentionally get cold and endure the cold to make that transfer into the temperature change like a little bit less abrupt and uncomfortable.
I remember seeing an episode of Vikings where I don't know if you've ever seen that show. Ragnar Lothbrok, like he was about to go into battle and he just went up on a mountain and froze his ass off for like a couple weeks to like toughen himself up.
Tough.
So similar thing.
Yeah. Cold shock, proteins, all the things he chucks.
What else? 3 minutes in the ice bath and I'm good.
What else would be important as we're wrapping up to share in relation to red light therapy and benefits and different things that you guys specifically offer, or anything that would be of value for people?
Well, I would say one thing that we didn't cover is there is kind of a U-shaped response curve, so more isn't necessarily better. Certainly, I do sing the praises of sunlight and red and near-infrared light in particular, especially between 600 and 900 nanometers because they're super safe. Having said that, there's only so much light that the cells can absorb and use at once. And so it's not, you don't necessarily want to, have a powerful panel like you have and spend a couple of hours in front of it. That's just not how it works.
You usually set them like 20 minutes or so. You kind of like stop
usually
it
we
at 20.
say 10. Even 10. I think, if I was going to do 20 or 30 minutes in a day, I'd probably break it up into 3 10-minute sessions. That's how I would do it. And that's just for kind of like regular maintenance, and just making up for the fact that you're not outside. My only caveat to that would be like for an injury. If you have an injury, I think the cells need more, and so it's it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and give them more.
Yeah.
And so I remember when I hurt my back 2 Christmases ago, I had that light up against my back for like an hour.
How close? I'd imagine there's a specific like term for it, but as you distance yourself from light or like a panel or anything, it exponentially becomes less powerful as you get further away.
The inverse square law.
Yeah, right. Inverse square law. Yeah, I was talking about that with somebody else. How close do we want to be with a red light panel?
So the inverse square law is accurate, but it doesn't quite translate into a panel, and the reason is that
it's kind of projecting going straight out. It's being concentrated like a cold laser more.
Yeah. So like the panels are coming out at an angle, or the LEDs. I mean, there's a whole panel of them, and so and they're putting out the light at ours use a 60-degree beam angle, so the light goes out like this. So let's say you're dead center of the panel at 6 inches. If you move to 12 inches, it doesn't go down. Like it doesn't go down 1/10 or because you've doubled the distance, or the square, because you're moving into the field of neighboring LEDs, right? So like that LED above that one and below that one, maybe when you were close, you weren't within the beam, but you've gone 12 inches away, so now you're in the beam.
Yeah.
So of the neighboring LEDs.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry so much about being too far away. I mean, anywhere between 6 and 18 inches, you're gonna get. With panels that we build, you're going to be.
If you want deep penetration,
you want
6 to 18 inches.
Well, if you want to optimize for penetration,
I don't understand why you're laughing.
You want to be closer, actually. So, like, if I had an injury, like with my back, I was actually pretty much right on the thing. And for the hands and the feet or an ankle, like getting close to the panel is fine.
Yeah.
But we measure at 6 inches, so I can tell you exactly the intensity at 6 inches. I know that it's quite safe at 6 inches, so. Generally just recommend at least 6 inches and just 10 minutes.
What if for me, I'm like a disregard everything that's suggested in any of like the safety pamphlet? And is there any problem if I'm like an inch from a thing, or even just pressing it directly against me?
Probably not, except for maybe the eyes. The eyes would be someplace like I would really worry if you if you were going to be a cowboy and be an inch away and stare at the damn thing. Like please don't do that.
The great thing with again the body, I think. Intuitively speaking, is when something's not good for it, it usually doesn't feel good.
Right. And
so you get your eyes too close, you're like, this sucks.
And you just have to
not going to do that.
Just actually listen.
It's amazing.
And I will share with you that I actually have done that. Like because the whole eye question came up, and I said, I wonder what will happen. So I did try to hurt myself. Because I need to sleep well at night, and I want to make sure that my stuff that we put out there is safe. Yeah. And so I'm guinea pig number one. And what happens is you start to get uncomfortable. I mean, it's not comfortable. Like nobody would actually do that.
It's like immediately not nice.
It's not. Yeah. And so and you feel the warmth, and you're just like, and the eye starts to water, and you're like, and it's actually hard to hold your eyes open. Yeah. When they're like that, and you're just like, okay. My body is telling me not to do that, so all I need to do is listen.
It's the same with like the whole sun gazing thing. Like when the sun is just cresting over the horizon, it's pretty chill to look at the sun. I'm not suggesting anybody does that. Not a doctor, right. But like you can feel it's like this is all right, and then there's a moment where it's like this isn't all right anymore, and it's the rest of the day. Don't do that anymore.
It's that simple.
It's not that hard. Thank you so much, man.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, it's a pleasure to meet you. I really appreciate your hospitality.
Yeah, for sure. Man.
I wanted to do this in person. I just think it's, I don't know, it's a better experience.
No, it's great to get to connect. Yeah,
so, and also I just want to know, I'm a big supporter of the channel. I mean, if there's anything we can do to support you, just let us know.
Amazing. So. We're doing, this will probably go out in August. If not, we'll do another giveaway. But for people listening on the YouTube or listening anywhere, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll be making an announcement of a giveaway of a red light panel as well as a molecular hydrogen device. Is that what we call it? A device?
Hydrogen bottle.
Hydrogen bottle.
Through a process of electrolysis, it separates the hydrogen and the oxygen, and you drink it and you absorb the hydrogen gas into your body, and it's a powerful antioxidant.
And there's supposed to be I've seen some research around like having anti-inflammatory effects and various different things with molecular hydrogen.
It does. I mean, the short explanation of what it does is there's a hydroxy radical in your body, OH, and which is created through normal cellular metabolism, but it happens to be more problematic in like diabetics, for instance. Yeah. And so OH, and then so if you have free H, which is just molecular hydrogen absorbed into your body, H plus OH turns back into water. So you have this very reactive free radical that when it meets up with its hydrogen friend, turns back into water.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you. I appreciate you just investing so much of yourself and life into being able to provide all this in such a cogent way.
I'm doing my best, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. If people want to get involved in the red light world for themselves and work on their eye health or skin health or collagen repair or hair health or nut health or whatever, what's the recommendation? Where should they go?
Well, I would say go to our website, mitoredlight.com. If you go to the Learn section, we've got a massive repository of articles we've written on various topics.
Cool.
We also have a massive database of getting close to 8,000 for the science geeks that want to actually look at the papers. We've got a link to a database with 8,000, close to 8,000 publications, and you can go deep on any specific topic.
Amazing. And what was the website?
MitoRedLight.com.
Cool. Social media, probably Mito Red Light.
At Mito Red Light Official, I think,
All right,
on
we'll
Instagram.
include all that
I don't do social media. I don't know.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you all for tuning in. That's it. That's all. I'll see you next week.